This video was brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and receive exclusive perks. Link in the description. Season 1. Thomas and Gordon. When this episode was first put onto home media in the US, Ringo Starr's line,
"You can't catch me," and off he ran laughing,
was inexplicably changed to,
"You can't catch me," and off Thomas ran laughing.
This bizarre change was exclusive only to the first 1990 VHS release. Since then, all releases following inexplicably changed the line back to the original one.
"You can't catch me," and off he ran laughing.
Why such a simple line was changed so minutely at all in the first place is beyond me. Edward and Gordon. In the background of this shot, a set of teak brown coaches can be seen in the goods shed. These are actually the old coaches, which were painted green on one side and teak brown on the other. The Sad Story of Henry. This story has the most TV adaptations of any story in the franchise, with a total of 4. That includes this episode, the original ill-fated 1953 live broadcast adaptation, and 2 very different adaptations in CGI. Edward, Gordon, and Henry. You may have noticed that Gordon's Express consists of 5 coaches, and strangely, the last 2 are both brake coaches. This is because this is all the express coach stock that they had on hand at the time, and they put it all together to form one long train, as the train being long and heavy was paramount to the story. Thomas's train. The US dub adds a line at the end of the episode. The original UK dub ends with the engines teasing Thomas, and then the ending theme plays.
"Look, there's Thomas who wanted to pull a train but forgot about the coaches."
In the US dub, after the engines tease Thomas, the narrator says,
"Look, there's Thomas who wanted to pull a train, but forgot about the coaches." But Thomas had already learned not to make the same mistake again.
Thomas and the Trucks. George Carlin's dub of this episode is horrendously out of sync on most releases, with the audio delayed by about 4 seconds.
Thomas shut his eyes. "I must stop." When he opened his eyes, he saw he had stopped just in front of the buffers.
Even to this day, on all streaming platforms, the episode is still out of sync. The only release of George Carlin's dub correctly in sync with the footage was on the US VHS A Big Day for Thomas. Thomas and the Breakdown Train. James's brake blocks catching fire was accomplished by fixing a sparkler under his chassis. It was taped on, they lit it, and grabbed the shot. This was probably pretty tricky to film, so it only appears in this one close-up of his wheels. James and the Coaches. James worries about losing his red paint and being painted blue.
"If you can't behave, I shall take away your red coat and have you painted blue."
We finally got to see what a blue James looks like years later in Season 22's An Engine of Many Colors, when James has a dream of being painted blue.
I'm blue! Oh no!
Troublesome Trucks. The grade of the Gordon's Hill set was steep and impossible for the Gauge 1 engine props to haul long trains up. So to accomplish this, the props were pulled up the hill with fishing wire. If you look closely in this shot, you can see the wire. James and the Express. The Shining Time Station airing of this episode bizarrely adds this line when James crosses the viaduct.
"Hurry, hurry, hurry," puffed James.
When released on VHS, the line was omitted. The George Carlin dub retains the line, but it is said much earlier, when James is still departing the station.
"You're pulling us well! You're pulling us well!" sang the coaches. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," puffed James.
Thomas and the Guard. The scene of Thomas being stopped at the signal appears to have been filmed twice on different sets. It's believed that the initial version was shot on this set, and shots from it were reused in the Let's Have a Race music video. Thomas and Annie's close-ups in the final episode are also from this shoot, with the buffer stop beside Thomas and the road beside Annie. Why the scene was totally reshot on a completely new set is currently unknown. Thomas goes fishing. This infamous meme is from this episode.
Inspector, he whispered, can you see fish?
Thomas, Terrence, and the Snow. A clip from this episode was featured on the show Telly Addicts during their 1990 Christmas special.
Well, this is a tribute to anybody who thinks that British Rail is just a bunch of cowboys and engines.
The scene of Thomas getting stuck in the snow was shown, and the guests were presented with 3 questions after.
Isn't that sad? Thomas crying. And I wonder just how many of you have stood on a platform because of sobbing trains.
Thomas and Bertie. The famous shot of Thomas passing the windmill traveling from left to right, as used in the show's intro, appears in this episode.
Steady, Thomas, said his driver. We'll beat Bertie yet.
Tenders and turntables. When James begins spinning on the turntable, you can make out the reflection of a crew member's face in his smokebox. Trouble in the shed. All the engines in the workshop are actually just the other main characters, covered in tarps. The second one from the left is an unmodified BR-80 model by Marklin, which was used throughout Season 1 to move trains in the background. The workshop is made up of various existing buildings. The sidewall and the glass roof are from the goods shed at Tidmouth, and the rear of the shed is the left wall of Knapford. Percy runs away. A line is said by different characters in each dub. In the UK dub, it is Percy who says,
I'm sorry I was cheeky, said Percy. You were clever to stop.
In the US dub, it's Gordon who says it.
I'm sorry I was cheeky, said Percy. You were clever to stop, replied Gordon.
Gordon saying the line doesn't really make any sense, since he was the one who stopped to prevent the earlier collision, not Percy. Not sure why it was changed. Cole. There's a slight continuity error in this episode. The close-up of Henry traveling depicts him in his new shape, which he of course doesn't receive until the next episode. The Flying Kipper. And funnily enough, the exact opposite occurs in this episode. While Henry is supposed to be in his new shape, the close-ups of him traveling here depict him in his old shape. Seems like someone in the editing room got the shots mixed up. Whistles and sneezes. In the original book story of this episode, it is stated that Henry's fireman was hit by a stone.
They were silly, stupid boys who thought it'd be fun to drop stones down his funnel. One hit the fireman on the head as he was shoveling coal. The driver opened the first aid box, bandaged the fireman's head, and planned what he was going to do.
This does not occur in the episode, but a prop of a fireman with a bump on his head was built for it, constructed by model maker Jonathan Seville. It went unused, and it's unknown if the scene was actually filmed. Toby and the Stout Gentleman. This episode was retitled Toby the Tram Engine in America. On the back cover of the 1992 VHS Tenders and Turntables, the episode is hilariously mistitled Toby the Train Engine. I mean, I guess it's not totally incorrect, right?
Whoosh!
Thomas in trouble. The frame of Thomas used in this infamous meme comes from this episode.
But I don't catch cows, sir. Don't be funny, snapped the policeman. He looked at Thomas's wheels. No side plates either.
Dirty objects. James's big crash with the tar tankers was filmed from multiple angles. Footage from an alternate side view of the crash was reused in the 2003 music video, Troublesome Trucks, nearly 20 years after it was filmed. Off the rails. The voice heard through Topham's phone is actually random dialogue from Thomas in Trouble sped up.
So Gordon didn't want to take the special train and ran into a ditch. But however much he argued with him, it was no good. The law is the law, he said, and we can't change it. The fat controller felt exhausted.
Down the Mine. The original 1983 pilot episode of the series was notoriously based on this story. It differed largely from the final episode, with completely different props of Thomas and Gordon. This test pilot has never surfaced online, though some shots of it were reused in the final episode. Most notably, this shot of Thomas puffing past Knapford Station, as well as this close-up of Thomas's coupling, and these shots of Topham. Note how his face is painted differently from some of the other shots of him in this same episode. CGI series producer Ian McHugh has confirmed that the pilot footage does still exist in Mattel's vault. We can only hope that it will eventually, one day, be made public. Thomas's Christmas Party. The lights used on Tidmouth sheds in the final scene are actual Christmas tree lights. They look pretty out of scale next to the engines, but a pretty good example showing the true size of the Gauge 1 props. Season 2. Thomas, Percy, and the Coal. This popular meme is from this episode.
It was time for Thomas to leave. He had seen everything.
Cows. In Season 1, when Henry received his new shape, his wheel arches above his wheels were removed. In this episode, he regains them, and they have been present on him throughout the entire show since. Bertie's Chase. Throughout Seasons 1 and 2, Bertie did not have eyebrows. In this close-up of him smiling here, you can make out residue of eyebrow stickers, meaning they likely tested eyebrows on Bertie for this season, and decided against them before filming. I can't explain why, but Bertie with eyebrows here looks so wrong. Interestingly, there is a photo of Bertie from this episode wearing his tired face, which has eyebrows. He would eventually gain eyebrows on all his faces in Season 3. Saved from scrap. Trevor's livery in the show differs from the books. In the Railway series, he's painted full black with gold boiler bands. In the show, he's green, with red lining and red wheels. The character is based on the real-life traction engine Fiery Elias, which was owned by Teddy Boston, the good friend of Wilbert Audrey. Funnily enough, it's the TV version of Trevor that bears a closer resemblance to his real-life basis, contrast to the book version. Old Iron. The events of this story are based on an incident that occurred in Alton, Illinois. An Alco S2 diesel ran away from a yard and traveled 25 or so miles without a driver. Another locomotive waited up the line for the runaway to pass, and then caught up with it, coupling to it. The crew scrambled aboard and took control of the runaway engine. Thomas and Trevor. Thomas wears only one face throughout the entire episode for some bizarre reason, his open-mouth smiling one. Strangely, they never changed it out to a different expression for any scene, which is particularly odd in this scene when he eyes Trevor with skepticism.
Thomas eyed the newcomer doubtfully. "A what engine?" he asked.
Percy and the Signal. Thomas's special coach from the cancelled episode, The Missing Coach, is present in the background here, coupled up to the express coaches. It was right there in plain view of us the entire time. Duck takes charge. You all ready for this? Because you cannot unsee it once I show it to you. This close-up of Gordon was filmed on this part of the set. That's the same coal pile and building on the left, and the track that Gordon is on isn't connected to anything. Henry's close-up was also filmed here, with that water tower added and some buildings behind him to hide Tidmouth sheds being in the background. They really were the masters of hiding this kind of stuff in close-ups. Percy and Harold. Harold's spinning propeller blades are actually just a transparent disc to simulate the impression that they're spinning at a fast speed. The crew likely didn't like how this looked, and by the next season, Harold's actual propellers spin when he's flying. The Runaway. Would you believe me if I told you this was the last time that Thomas's tired face was used on him until Season 6? It did have one appearance in between in Season 3, when it was mistakenly used on Percy here in Diesel Does It Again. Percy takes the plunge. There's a rather large blip in the series continuity with this episode. Percy recalls the events of Percy's Promise.
It was raining hard. Water swelled under my boiler. I couldn't see where I was going, but I struggled on.
An episode that would not happen until the next season. Originally, Percy's Promise was planned to be adapted this season, its episode code even appearing on concept art, but it was ultimately cut for unknown reasons. and thus making the mention of its events here a pretty major continuity error. Pop goes the Diesel. The shot of Diesel reversing trying to push the trucks back is actually taken from the rescue scene later on in the episode, as the breakdown train's flatbed, complete with a truck on top of it, can be seen here behind him. Dirty work. Fishing wire was used to pull this truck off screen after Duck biffs it, and if you look closely, you can see it here. A close shave. The face used on the close-up scale Duck in the barber shop is actually Thomas's, from his close-up prop. The giveaway is the nose shape. The nose is round, contrasts with Duck's, which is normally pointy and more triangular. Better late than never. Some fun continuity introduced in this episode. The viaduct is established of being under repair here, and for all its appearances in the season following this one, it is seen with scaffolding, showing that it is still being worked on. The scaffolding is not present on its appearances in Cows and A Close Shave before this. Gotta love that attention to detail. Brake van. Douglas's nameplate was accidentally left on him during the filming of the Gordon's Hill scene. In the original version of this episode, a black bar was added in post-production to censor it, while other shots were cropped to hide it. In the restored version of this episode, they did not recreate the black bar, and the previously cropped shots are now uncropped, leaving Douglas's nameplate in plain view. The Deputation. Likely due to this being filmed at the same time as the episode Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree, Donald and Douglas incorrectly have their nameplates on during the scene of them plowing snow on the Valley set. Thomas comes to breakfast. This episode was filmed at the same time as the Tidmouth shots in Brake Van. In this close-up of Percy, you can see Donald's tender still stuck in the signal box behind him. And in this shot, you can see the giant gaping hole left in the signal box after the crash. Daisy. Rick Sigelkow, the co-producer of Shining Time Station, did not approve of Daisy's design, believing that her makeup and eyelashes made her look stereotypically feminine. As a result, this and the following episode never aired on Shining Time, making its US debut in 1993 exclusively on VHS, a whole 7 years after its original UK airing. Sigelkow's disapproval of Daisy is also why she was strangely absent in Season 3. Percy's predicament. This hill with the warning sign is actually the raised roadbed area of the Elsbridge station set, just with tracks laid on top of the road, and filmed from a low angle to hide it. The Diseasel. All the boats at Brendam Harbor have names on them, and most are named after crew members. This barge seen in this episode named Steve is likely named after First Assistant Director Steve Asquith, and the tug called Terry is likely named after Director of Photography Terry Permain. Wrong road. This shot right here is the only time in the entirety of this season that Boko is seen moving. Go ahead, try to unnotice that. Edward's exploit. The bulbs of Edward and Henry's lamps are Christmas tree lights. No wonder they stick out so far. Ghost train. A battery pack was used to power Percy's headlamp, and it can clearly be seen taped to his side here. Woolly Bear. Ringo Starr's US dub of this episode was never released on VHS or DVD. However, it did find its way onto home media via a read-along cassette for the book Diesel's Devious Deed. Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree. Ringo Starr's dub of this episode did air in the US, though he never re-narrated it with American terminology. So every line featuring Britishisms such as the Fat Controller were just cut out, and nothing replaced them, resulting in these awkward long pauses of nothing being said.
As a reward for all your hard work, you may go and enjoy the carols. Be quick now.
Season 3. A Scarf for Percy. When this episode first aired on CITV in 1993, both scenes with Henry were edited out to shorten the runtime. The episode ended right after James left Percy to tell Henry the news. Unfortunately, I could not find an archived recording of this broadcast, So here's a quick edit showing how it went.
Hello, Percy, so you found the scarf, eh? But legs go in trousers, not funnels.
And he puffed away to tell Henry the news.
Percy's Promise. Season 3 was the first season produced after David Mitten's other show, Tugs, and many of that show's props were repurposed for Thomas starting with this season. The Coast Guard's prop can be seen here in the seaside village, albeit only his stern is visible. Time for Trouble. The ending dialogue is different in the US and UK dubs. In the UK, James gives a sarcastic laugh at Toby's comment.
Never mind, James, whispered Toby. They're only joking. Ha ha, said James.
In the US, James scoffs Toby, and the narrator remarks that Toby smiles in response.
Never mind, James, whispered Toby. They're only joking, said James. Toby just smiled.
Gordon and the Famous Visitor. This episode marks the only appearance of the real-life loco, City of Truro. The prop was built as a dummy with no motor and, strangely, no face. As reference photos show, its smokebox door was repurposed from a Markland BR-80 loco. Following this season, Truro's prop was repurposed into a scrapped loco for background dressing, which can be seen in several episodes. Donald's Duck. The nest box with the egg in it is actually just one of the short quarry wagons with its buffers and wheels ripped off. You can even see the holes where the buffers were. Again, try to unnotice this. Thomas gets bumped. This is the very first episode of the series not based on material written by the Audrey family. It, like several episodes of Season 3, was based on magazine stories written by Andrew Brenner, who would go on to become the show's head writer years later in 2012. Two stories, Hello Thomas and A Bump on the Line, were combined to create the plot of this episode. Thomas, Percy, and the Dragon. The script for this episode has some extra dialogue in the final scene that went unused. It states, Percy was waiting at the station when Thomas, who had cut off steam, ran silently into it. Percy couldn't see Thomas. All he could see, moving silently along, was the dragon. This was trimmed out of the episode, likely for time, but it was filmed. In this deleted shot of Thomas entering Elsbridge, he isn't puffing smoke, a clear indicator that he had cut off steam to sneak up on Percy. Diesel does it again. TBS Coast to Coast News visited Shepperton Studios during the filming of this episode, in which they got footage of an unused take of the crash scene being filmed. As they state, this take went unused because trucks aren't meant to float.
Though this scene is destined for the cutting room floor, because trucks are not meant to float.
Henry's Forest. Reverend Wilbert Audrey notoriously hated this episode for its lack of railway realism. He took issue with the fact that Henry was simply able to stop on the main line in the forest without his crew alerting a signalman.
What responsible driver would stop as if he was in a roadside lay-by?
The railway code that this breaks is known as Rule 55. The Trouble with Mud. James hauls the express in this episode, and it is made up of the red express coaches. Publicity photos from this episode show him hauling green ones, and the weather backdrop shows the scenes as stormy. It's believed the entire scene of James getting stuck on the hill was filmed twice, and the current theory is that it was reshot because the crew used the wrong color coaches, conflicting with earlier scenes when he departed Knapford with the red ones. This is all speculation, of course. No official reason has yet been confirmed. No joke for James. The script for this episode also has some dialogue that went unused in the scene when James tricks Thomas. The scene was meant to open with James's driver warming his fire and then stepping away to speak to the signalman. And it's while he was away that James played his ruse on Thomas. This bit was trimmed out, but you can still see James's driver on the signal box talking to the signalman in the final episode. Thomas, Percy, and the Post Train. The ever-beloved Post Train theme is strangely missing in the original UK dub of this episode.
On a clear night, a big shiny moon brightens their journey, but often Thomas and Percy can't even see the stars.
Thomas and Percy haul the Post Train here in eerie silence. This, of course, was fixed in later versions. Trust Thomas. This is the final episode that Thomas is seen with red bunker lining on his rear end. The next time we see it, it's explicitly removed, and remains so until the adventure begins, years later when it was re-added to his CGI model. Mavis. This is the final episode to use the full ending theme that leads into the end credits.
She took the trucks to the sheds and scuttled home to the quarry as quickly as she could.
It's also the only episode in Season 3 to use it, strangely. Toby's Tightrope. Thanks to the wider frame in the restored version of this episode, we can clearly see hands at the top of the screen here pushing the trucks when they bump into Toby. Edward, Trevor, and the Really Useful Party. As some photos reveal, Diesel was meant to appear in the opening scene of this episode, likely putting down the idea of the Vickers party and insulting Edward for wanting to help out in spite of being stuck to his rails, thus explaining why Edward is sad in the next scene. Diesel's appearance was ultimately cut, likely for time. Buzz Buzz. This episode is unique, for it's the only of the original series run to use hand-drawn cell animation to animate the bee that stings James. It was animated by Peter Chang of the Magic Camera Company. Several original cells have been sold on eBay. All at Sea. The final scene of Percy, Duck, and Thomas on the dock looking into the sunset is iconic, and one of the most memorable shots of the series. It's a favorite among many of the crew members, including director David Mitton and show creator Britt Allcroft. Thomas at its peak, baby. One Good Turn. There's a deleted scene from this episode that features Bill, Ben, and Boko sleeping in the yard at night. Some photos exist from this scene, one of which shows Boko sleeping, the only time his sleeping face was ever used. Presumably, the context here is the twins are bickering after their fallout and keeping poor Boko awake. Tender Engines. This episode features the only appearance of real-life Loco, Flying Scotsman, in the model series. Only his 2 tenders were built, and the engine itself is never shown. You can make out the cab of the engine they are connected to in this shot, which is simply just Henry. Escape. According to series composer Mike O'Donnell, when he and Junior Campbell presented David Mitton with the theme for Oliver's Escape, Mitton was so taken away with it that he invited everyone from T-Stage of Shepperton Studios to come listen to it.
I remember when we did Escape for Oliver, Dave Mitton was so pleased with it that he brought all the crew in to the studio, and so they could listen to it, because they could see it with the visuals, and it was quite flattering for him to do that. So he really liked that one,
and I do not blame him, because that theme is awesome.
Was there any other times during the production that he did something like that?
No.
That's so neat.
Oliver owns up. Oliver's accident here was based on a specific real-life incident, where a Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway 242 tank engine reversed into a turntable well, landing bunker first and its front sticking up into the air. A pretty hilarious sight. Bulgy. As can be seen in the close-up of Bulgy at the end of the episode, the brand of his tires is Dunlop, a real tire brand, operated currently by Goodyear. Heroes. This episode is one of the few times in the model era that Gordon actually wears the correct express head code with his lamps. One lamp on his left and one on his right lamp irons. The only other times that this occurs was in Season 2's Wrong Road, and his quick blink and you'll miss it appearance in Season 5's Haunted Henry. Seems the crew only seemed to care about head codes being accurate when the trains were traveling at night, I guess. Percy, James, and the Fruitful Day. The green liquid that squirts on Percy during the crash is dishwasher soap, squirted straight from the bottle. Thomas and Percy's Christmas Adventure. The holiday celebrated in this episode was changed from Christmas to Thanksgiving in the US dub. As a result, the entire scene of Percy and Thomas discussing Santa Claus was cut, shortening the episode's length by about 17 seconds. This created a syncing error with the dubbing track, and all the sound effects and score are out of sync with the footage following the 3-minute mark or so, where the cutscene would have appeared.
Percy, I've just remembered. Your mail train is still back at the siding, isn't it? Percy hurried back to fetch it. Just then, Toby arrived with Henrietta.
In the most recent version, as it is currently streaming on Amazon, the full uncut episode is used, with the Santa Claus scene kept in. So the sound and music are all in sync, but now the narration is horribly off.
Percy, I've just remembered. Your mail train is still back at the siding, isn't it? Percy hurried back to fetch it. Just then, Toby arrived with Henrietta.
I will never not be annoyed by how the US dub will never have a version of this episode that isn't messed up. Season 4. Grandpuff. Smudger was recycled from Rheneas's prop with a new face. Rheneas's orange paint was covered in adhesive plastic sheets, and Smudger's green paint and lining were applied on top of that, to avoid having to repaint Rheneas entirely. The orange of Rheneas's paint underneath is clearly visible in window corners and ledges and the rear of his cylinders. Sleeping Beauty. The rescuer's map of the Mid-Sodor Railway is actually just a map of the Isle of Wight Railway, flipped upside down, and with the station's names changed. Bulldog. Vulcan's derailment was based on an incident that occurred on the real-life Festiniog Railway in 1962. While Duke's real-life basis, Prince, double-headed a train with the engine Linda derailed and nearly toppled over a hillside. Prince held her steady until she was re-railed, in a careful operation that took 14 hours. The area that she came off is now known as Linda's Leap. You Can't Win. This is an extremely clever shot. The set itself is flat, but shot with the camera at an angle to make it look like it's a hill that Duke is climbing. To really sell the effect, all the trees are slanted too to match the camera's position, to make them look like they are growing upwards. In reality, the set would have looked like this. A Bad Day for Sir Handel. In 2011, this episode accidentally aired in Romania without a narration track. The entire episode was just the clean dubbing track, only featuring music and sound effects. A pretty huge oversight, but absolutely fantastic for us fans who want clean versions of those dubbing tracks. Peter Sam and the Refreshment Lady. This story is based on an incident that occurred on the real-life Tallyclyn Railway in Wales. The guard blew the whistle too early, and the train set off, leaving a woman behind. The guard that day was no other than Wilbert Audrey himself, and the woman left behind was the driver's mother-in-law. Four Little Engines. This episode is strangely officially labeled as the 5th episode of Season 4, even though it very clearly takes place after Sir Handel and Peter Sam arrive in A Bad Day for Sir Handel. When watched in the official order, this causes some continuity issues, the most notable being Skarloey is sent away at the end of this one, and then is present in the next 2 episodes. So, we'll put it in its correct placement here. Trucks. Much of the score is missing in the US dub and the version released in the UK on the 1994 Rock and Roll VHS. The music was correctly reinserted in later versions of the UK dub.
Rusty promised to follow with the rest. Peter Sam didn't mind the extra work,
but it was never fixed in the US, resulting in much of this episode occurring in ominous silence.
Rusty promised to follow with the rest. Peter Sam didn't mind the extra work. He left his coaches at the station and trundled cheerfully on.
Home at Last. An unpainted cast of an unused version of Skarloey's smiling face was used in this shot. Note the lack of eyebrows and his teeth not being painted white. Rock and Roll. The ride Rock and Roll Duncan at Thomas Land, Japan was based on this episode, complete with the coaster cars looking like Duncan's coaches. The ride was retired in 2023 and replaced with a new coaster themed around Nia. Special Funnel. Duke is present in this episode, cementing that this episode takes place after he was found and rescued in Sleeping Beauty. This is also consistent with Peter Sam still having his old funnel when the trio reunited in that episode, as he gets his new funnel in this one. Steamroller. The Story Library book adaptation of this episode depicts Sir Handel and George's drivers getting into a fist fight before the policeman arrives and breaks the fight up. Sir Handel's driver even hangs his hat and jacket on George before throwing hands. This doesn't occur in the episode, and was likely pulled from this line in the original book story.
A policeman strolled up in time to stop the argument, turning to fisticuffs, all set to work clearing up the mess.
Passengers and polish. The eye mechanisms on the smaller narrow gauge engine props were powered by separate battery boxes hidden off-screen or in boxcars and coaches behind them. During the final scene, Duncan's battery box can be seen sitting behind him in the shed. It's even more obvious in this photo. Gallant old engine. In the current master of the US dub, the main Thomas theme song inexplicably begins playing faintly in the background when Skarloey tells the others about the past.
How awful, murmured Peter Sam. I tried hard, continued Skarloey, but my old wheels ached.
This is clearly an editing mistake of some sort, and is currently present in the episode streaming on Amazon. Rusty to the rescue. This episode marks the only time that Daisy and Boko appear on screen together. This is notable because their props infamously shared a chassis. One of the two is sitting on a fake chassis constructed for this episode, which appears to have been cleverly hidden by props on set and some camera trickery. Thomas and Stepney. Several sound effects are different or flat out missing in the US dub. Music is missing too, notably the busy theme that builds up when the special train is ordered.
He was hardly out of sight when the engines heard shouting at the station. Moments later came the alarm. Stop all trains!
In the US dub, this all occurs in silence.
He was hardly out of sight when the engines heard shouting at the station. Moments later came the alarm. Stop all trains!
Train stops play. Several shots from the cricket field scene were repurposed for the 2003 music video, The Red Balloon. The hot air balloon was digitally superimposed into the footage, and some digital trickery was done to change the cricketers' shouting expressions to smiles. Bowled out. According to this episode's description on the back cover of the VHS, Thomas's Train and 17 Other Stories, the reason that Class 40 comes to Sodor is because Daisy is unwell, a plot detail that is never mentioned nor present in the original book story. A version of this is also present in the description for the episode's official upload on YouTube.
With ProPlan veterinary supplements, you have the power to help your dog thrive. Support
Henry and the Elephant. In the original book story, the tunnel the elephant hides in was the Tidmouth Tunnel. The episode changes it to the more known Henry's Tunnel, and even alters a line to reinforce that continuity.
He hated tunnels. He'd been shut up in one once, but this was worse.
He had been shut in the tunnel for being afraid of the rain, but this was worse.
Toad stands by. The tankers' faces are the smaller faces made for the narrow-gauge slate wagons, reused. This was the only ever time in the series that tankers were depicted with faces, all the way until the 2017 CGI series movie, Journey Beyond Sodor.
Look at my face! Don't I look like a clown?
Bullseyes. As far as I'm aware, this is the only time in the series that Toby is depicted with having a whistle.
Toby's bell rang and his whistle sounded, but Champion took no notice.
It is never brought up again, and was apparently forgotten by the show writers. It was officially retconned in Season 13's Toby's New Whistle, when Toby claims that he's never used a steam whistle before.
I've never used a steam whistle before.
Thomas and the Special Letter. This episode was made in honor of it being the 100th episode of the series, and so nearly all of the standard gauge engines of the Northwestern Railway appear. The only one who doesn't is Daisy, likely due to her and Boko sharing a chassis. The big city on the mainland that the engines go to is never outright named, though in an interview with David Mitton, he confirmed that the big city was indeed London.
This is the story where it's Fat Controller's engines, where actually all the major engines are all going off to London to a big show for all the kids.
Paint pots and queens. The face of the Queen is purposely never shown, though we do get to see it in Season 5's Lady Hat's birthday party, when her prop was reused as a guest at the party. The Queen's head would later be completely repainted to represent the Refreshment Lady in Season 7. Fish. Several of the fish crates have the text Fulton's written on the sides of them. This is a reference to the famous Fulton Street Fish Market in New York City, the largest and most important wholesale fish market on the east coast of the United States. First established in 1822, the market is still around and operating today. Special attraction. George Carlin hiccups after saying this line.
Come on, come on. Why aren't you cars where you should be?
And they hilariously kept that take in. Mind that bike. The interior of Percy's cab in this episode is actually ducks. The giveaway is the shape of the cab window and how tiny the porthole is. Season 5. Cranky Bugs. According to the concept art by Robert Galliers, Edward was originally meant to be trapped with the big engines at the docks during the storm, and was changed to Duck at some point later on. Horrid Laurie. Going by the dates on the film rushes for this season, Laurie 2's crash at the gorge was the final scene filmed for Season 5 on April 30th, 1998. A better view for Gordon. Gordon's crash through the station wall was pretty infamously based on the Gare Montparnasse crash in Paris, October 1895. The Granville-Paris Express was running late, and trying to make up time, the driver ran the train too fast and was unable to stop it in time as it approached the station. The train ran through the buffer stop, over the platform, and through the station's rear wall. Fortunately, no one on board the train died, but a woman on the street was killed by falling debris. Lady Hat's birthday party. This popular meme is from this episode.
Thomas had never seen the Fat Controller in such a mess.
James and the Trouble with Trees. An outtake made its way into the final cut of this episode. When James brakes after spotting the tree ahead, we get this close-up of his wheels locking, and his front pony truck is pretty noticeably derailed. As evident in the Season 5 film rushes, they did have a good take with the truck correctly on the rails. How the blooper take made it in is beyond me. Gordon and the Gremlin. The large-scale close-up prop of the Fulton Ferry from Tugs is used as the backdrop for the final scene with Topham and his mother. The giant ferry model was previously built for the collision scene in the Tugs episode Quarantine, when OJ's barge crashes into its side and rips a hole in it.
His barge swung out and hit the ferry. No! The ferry boat started to list, water rushing into a gaping hole.
By George. Concept art depicted Thomas's crash as being a lot more violent. After derailing, he would have plowed through the old barn and finally come to a stop in a muddy river. This was simplified when filmed, to him just coming to a stop once crashing through the barn. This episode's plot was proposed by this season's railway consultant, David Maidment, completely based on an incident that occurred during his time as station master at Aberdeig in 1964 or so. A ram inhabited the waiting room of the derelict station at Clanhilleth and attempted to attack anyone who dared enter. Put upon Percy. As is the case with a couple other episodes this season, the UK dub is missing music. When Annie and Clarabelle sing their song about Percy in most dubs, there's a little ditty that accompanies it.
Percy's been put upon, put upon, put upon. Percy's been put upon, poor old Percy.
In the UK dub, they sing in silence.
Percy's been put upon, put upon, put upon. Percy's been put upon, poor old Percy. Tee-hee-hee-hee-hee.
Toby and the Flood. Robert Galliers' concept art for this episode depicts the destruction from the dam collapse as far more dire. The bridge that gets swept away was placed right within the village, and the village would have flooded with it. This ultimately does not occur in the episode, likely for the large scope of it all. Haunted Henry. When this episode would air on PBS Kids Sprout, Henry's line,
"Stupid bird," said Henry,
was censored to remove the word stupid. Now, I could not find an actual archived recording of this anywhere online, so I can't confirm it, but people who recall it claim that only the word stupid was removed, instead of the entire line, resulting in the final edit sounding like,
"Take care on the old line, Henry." "Bird," said Henry.
hilarious. I personally remember it sounding more like this, with audio from earlier in the scene clipped over the whole line.
"Take care on the old line, Henry." "Owls, mists, ghosts."
But maybe that's a Mandela effect messing with me. Double teething troubles. Derek was originally envisioned as a D9500 diesel, aka a BR Class 14, as confirmed by David Maidment in his interview with SIF. The plot point of him breaking down on hills was based on the 14's inability to bank trains up the steep grade between Aberdeeg and Ebbw They usually ran hot about halfway up and cut out. His basis was changed later on though, to the even more faulty BR Class 17. Stepney gets lost. This episode technically features the final ever appearance of Boko. Stock footage of quarry trucks from Double Teething Troubles is used at one point, and on the far right of the frame, you can just make out Boko, giving him an ever so brief blink and you'll miss it background cameo here. What a way to go out. Toby's discovery. Bertram is a repaint of Duke's prop with Smudger's face. This was done to cut costs, as Bertram only has a few seconds of screen time. His wooden railway toy depicts him as a saddle tank engine, with an L on his side tanks. While once believed that this was based on original designs for Bertram as a tank engine, it's more than likely because of the photos provided to Learning Curve to use as reference for the toy, where his tender isn't in view, and his blank nameplate casts a shadow that looks like an L. Something in the air. The fish used on Thomas in the opening scene, and on Henry after his rescue, are real. They are sardines. Ew. Thomas, Percy, and Old Slowcoach. The left side of Old Slowcoach has no lining, while her right side has rather ornate gold lining on her brown sections. She is only ever shown from the left side in this episode, but she would gain gold lining on both sides at a later date, as evident in her reference photos taken in 2004. Thomas and the Rumors. This popular meme is from this episode.
"Because the engines think the special visitor is here to see if we can be replaced by Harold."
The fat controller laughed. Ho ho. Well, the engines are wrong and you shouldn't listen to rumours, Thomas.
Oliver's Find. The map of the east of Sodor in the signal box is actually a map of the Skarloey Railway, drawn up in Season 4, for which the show crew used as reference for all the locations and how they all connected to each other. Unfortunately, we've never seen the map in good quality. This is the best shot that we have of it. Happy Ever After. Bulstrode can be seen at the fishing village, without his face and iMech. Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday. Annie and Clarabelle received new resin props in this episode, replacing their previous ones. In all seasons prior, the two were made out of standard off-the-peg 10mm Stroudley composite coaches. The material was brittle though, and by season 5 the props had begun to crack and warp. So they built new ones out of resin, and wrote this episode around them being refitted to explain their new look in universe. Again, I just love that attention to detail. They didn't have to draw attention to them looking different, but they decided to provide some continuity. All episodes following this feature the new Annie and Clarabelle. A surprise for Percy. The crew often used Mavis to move trains in the backgrounds of scenes, as her prop was their most reliable runner. The film rushes for this episode reveal her pushing the runaway trucks in their run up the hill. Make someone happy. The crate carrying the carousel horses is actually the top half of a large-scale narrow-gauge slate wagon. Once again, impossible to unnotice once you notice. Busy going backwards. Alec Baldwin is often teased for his portrayal of James in this season, in which he gave him a very flamboyant voice.
"Oh, please. Now, excuse me, Sir Topham Hatt needs me to pull the express." "Oh, help! Go away!"
He was teased for this on Conan O'Brien in 2003.
And clearly you made James gay.
That's your interpretation.
And the clip they featured was from this episode.
"What was that?" exclaimed James.
What are you talking about?
So I was ahead of my time, man. I was ahead of my. We did that back in '99. That's Brokeback Railroad. We were doing that years ago.
Duncan gets spooked. Concept art for this episode depicts the old iron bridge as a curved viaduct. It was later changed to an arched girder bridge, likely to visually differentiate it from the already existing viaduct on the Skarloey Railway. Rusty and the Boulder. The dubbing tracks for the UK and US dubs are notably different, missing some music and using different sound effects in various spots. The sound effect when Boulder thuds onto the ground after his fall sounds like this in the UK dub, and like this in the US one. Snow. This episode uniquely features the only appearance of Gordon's snow machine, a prop we see in a total of 3 shots, and never clearly from a good angle. Interestingly, Learning Curve were going to make a toy of it in 2006 for the wooden railway line, which featured a spinning blower on its front. A prototype was built, but the toy was ultimately cancelled. Season 6. Salty's Secret. This is the only season premiere of the entire series where Thomas does not have a speaking role. Now that is pretty interesting, huh? A season kicks off with an episode that doesn't feature the main character. How bizarre. Harvey to the rescue. There's a rather hilarious blooper from this episode. One of the crash scene takes resulted in the brake van rolling right in front of the camera, blocking everything. The crew must have found it amusing, as it ended up getting used in the 2003 music video, Troublesome Trucks.
Then they pushed them once again, laughing while they crashed.
No sleep for Cranky. There's some interesting continuity put forward in this episode. In this one, and previously in Salty's Secret, Brendam Docks has an open-sided shed over the railway line. There was one in Season 5 too, albeit it looked different. Cranky knocks over the shed in this episode, and from this episode onwards, it was never rebuilt, and the tracks at Brendam Docks have consistently remained shed-free. I wonder if they purposely wrote that into the plot as an excuse to keep the set open, so it's easier to film on. I don't know, something to think about. A bad day for Harold the Helicopter. When James passes the camera here, you can clearly see a reflection of the camera and a crew member in his coach's windows. Elizabeth the Vintage Lorry. The cream-colored utility van, a part of Thomas's train in the opening shot, is one of the Topham Circus vans from Henry and the Elephant, with the Topham Circus banners removed. The Fogman. This is the final episode to be shot in 4:3 full screen. All the shots at Tidmouth Sheds were filmed in true 16:9 and cropped to 4:3. Every episode following this one were filmed nearly entirely in true 16:9. Jack jumps in. This is the first episode of the series not directed by David Mitton. It and the following episode were both directed by Steve Asquith, who would later become the main director of the series in Season 8. A Friend in Need. Ned's smokestack was removed for the shot of him passing under the bridge so the prop could clear it, and they all thought we wouldn't notice. It's only snow. The 2004 annual adaptation of this episode is considered to be of an earlier draft, with some details that differ from the final story. For one, Thomas collected the tree from Brendam Docks, and the engine he'd interact with there would be Salty. This scene was filmed, though it was reshot later to take place at Callan, and Salty's role was swapped with Edward. It's currently unknown why this was changed. Twin Trouble. The model of Topham in the foreground here is actually his larger gauge 3.5 prop, built to scale with the construction vehicle characters in the Jack episodes. It's used here to create perspective and make him seem closer to the camera than he actually is. The World's Strongest Engine. The full uncut version of Diesel's theme in this episode was posted by Junior Campbell on his YouTube channel. It reveals some parts that were muted in the final episode.
I'll push you all at the same time, he said. The trucks giggled. Push us all, that's the longest. Push us all, you'll be the strongest. That's me, said Diesel. The world's strongest engine. And Diesel shunted 5 trucks together.
And here's that scene with the muted music added back in.
I'll push you all at the same time, he said.
The trucks giggled.
Push us all, that's the longest. Push us all, you'll be the strongest. That's me, said Diesel, the world's strongest engine. And Diesel shunted 5 trucks together.
Scaredy engines. One of the spooky scrap pieces hanging in the smelters is the truck of an LGB G-scale OBB boxcar, more than likely from one used on tugs, and later repurposed for set dressing on Thomas. The giant hook and loop coupler is clearly visible here, and the housings for the wheels on either side here. Percy and the Haunted Mine. The first night shot of Percy approaching the mine here is actually an alternate angle of the shot of him running away in fright at the end of the scene. You can see the mine building on the left. Percy is wearing a scared expression, and the footage is notably slowed down because Percy would have been moving quickly here, being scared.
The signal changed. Percy was so scared he steamed away as fast as he could.
Middle engine. Every time Alec Baldwin says coal cars in this episode, the same soundbite is used.
One morning, Percy was cheerfully collecting coal cars from the smelter yards, with coal cars in front of him and coal cars behind. One by one, he shunted his coal cars onto the tipper's loading ramp. He bumped into the coal cars, and the coal cars bumped into Percy.
It's assumed that this happened because the US dub script failed to translate some of the usages of trucks to coal cars, so some editing in post-production was done to cover it up. James and the Red Balloon. Thomas's prop does not have a face in Percy's close-up here. It, however, appears to have been covered up with a facade of a gray face in post-production, as his eye mechanism should be visible. Jack Frost. The close-up of Percy's firebox being warmed is stock footage all the way back from Season 3's Percy's Promise, with some digital fire effects added. I have literally never noticed this before until making this video. Gordon Takes a Tumble. This episode drew up some controversy for its over-the-top crash sequence. It was deemed gratuitous by psychologist Dr. Brian Young.
One man who advises broadcasters on children's viewing habits says youngsters could be left traumatized by the sheer number of accidents.
They think, wow, there's a lot of train crashes here. Perhaps if I get on a train, I will be in a train crash.
His stance was that the crashes in Thomas were overly violent and could leave kids traumatized. Hit Entertainment responded denying the claim, saying that Thomas is a world away from reality TV.
Nobody ever gets hurt in any of the episodes, and there's always a positive outcome and a lesson learnt.
Psychologists say there's no need for censorship. Parents just need to know what children are watching and how it fits into the real world.
Percy's Chocolate Crunch. As confirmed by episode writer Brian Truman's writing credits, the original title for this was Puff Puff Pastry. Somehow it doesn't have the same ring as Percy's Chocolate Crunch. Buffer Bother. The original title for this episode was Bill and Ben's Excellent Adventure, as revealed on the back cover of the Complete Series 6 DVD. It, of course, being a reference to the 1989 film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Excellent!
Which coincidentally starred Thomas alumni George Carlin. Puff Puff Pastry? Alright, I get the change there. But it is such a crime that they changed this one. Toby Had a Little Lamb. This episode features the first appearance of series regular Farmer McColl. However, he is never referred to by name here. He's simply just the farmer.
The farmer's lambs are stranded on the hillside, cried Toby. We've got to rescue them.
When this episode was redubbed in 2005 by Michael Angelis and Michael Brandon for its half-hour PBS block, the script was changed, and he was referred to by name.
Farmer McColl's lambs are stranded on the hillside, cried Toby. We've got to rescue them.
His first official name drop would be later on in Season 8's Emily's Adventure. Thomas, Percy, and the Squeak. The squeak Alicia the Mouse makes at the end of the episode sounds like this in all dubs.
And Thomas named her Alicia.
And Thomas named her Alicia.
However, only on the UK Bumper Party Collection DVD, the sound effect is inexplicably different.
And Thomas named her Alicia.
Thomas the Jet Engine. The people on the platform at Knapford Station do not change much throughout Knapford's appearances throughout the season, as all the Knapford scenes were filmed at the same time. On Platform 5, there's consistently always a girl in pink with brown hair attempting to board a train. In this episode, during Percy's shot in the final scene, you can see the girl again, waiting to board his train of goods wagons. Maybe she's just a train enthusiast that really likes looking at rolling stock. Who's to say? Edward the Really Useful Engine. This is the only episode of the entire series that David Mitton himself wrote solo, with no involvement from other writers. Duncan. During Duncan's plummet into the swamp, the no fishing sign is digitally edited to spin out of place and land behind Duncan. This was likely done to create some continuity between shots, as it's right behind Duncan in the following close-up, and completely buried in the actual action shot. Rusty saves the day. The 4x3 full-screen crop of this episode features a pan-and-scan slide on the shot of Rusty crossing the viaduct. The shot remains static in the uncropped widescreen version. But interestingly, not all 4x3 crops have the pan-and-scan. The version present on the US James and the Red Balloon DVD features the shot static. Again, something I never noticed between versions until making this video. Faulty whistles. Starting with this episode, the Skarloey engine sheds takes on a completely new look. Its layout bears some striking similarities to the real-life Tallyclin Railways sheds at Pendray in early preservation era. Complete with a single-track carriage shed to the right of the main one, the main line running through the center of the yard, and a wooden shack on the left of it, which resembles the one that Tallyclin was sheeted under in the 1950s. Season 7. Emily's New Coaches. Emily's conception came all the way back during production of Season 6. A crew member had acquired a model of a Great Northern Stirling single. The show crew were impressed by it, and noted that the unique sloping design of the smokebox and cylinder casings made it look like the engine had woman's hair. It gave them the idea that this engine would be the perfect basis for a female steam engine character, and, well, the rest is history. Robert Galliers created concept art of Emily, and she was built for this season. Percy gets it right. The close-up of the bowl in Thomas's van during the rainstorm is the exact same close-up as at the end of the episode. Color corrected, the sky desaturated, and with rain effects added.
Percy saved the day, said Thomas. Agreed the bull.
Bill, Ben, and Fergus. A bent-up, damaged version of Fergus's chimney was built for the scene where he gets buried in the rock slide. For unknown reasons, it went unused. It is still around, however, and currently on display at the Thomas Exhibition layout at Drayton Manor Theme Park. The Old Bridge. Smaller scale slate wagons are used in the shot where Skarloey looks down at the rushing water to create perspective and make the distance down look farther than it actually is. Edward's Brass Band. The alarm that the band plays to call for help is the SOS Morse code distress signal. It consists of a sequence of 3 short notes, then 3 long, and then 3 short again, hence why Edward recognizes it as an alarm.
I can hear music, said his driver. That's not music, wheezed Edward. That's an alarm.
This code is not present in the rescored version by Robert Hartshorn.
I can hear music, said his driver. That's not music, wheezed Edward. That's an alarm.
What's the matter with Henry? As photos from this episode show, the front truck of Henry's train had a face. It was removed in the final episode, however. In the close-up of Henry's train, the face was photoshopped out using the side of the truck to cover it up. It's unknown why this was done, but was likely to maintain continuity, because when Henry arrived at the coal plant earlier in the episode, the front truck of the train did not have a face. James and the Queen of Sodor. In the 16:9 widescreen version of this episode, you can just make out Henry beside Gordon when James arrives back at the sheds. When the shot cuts back to Gordon, Henry has disappeared. Guess he didn't want to deal with James's ego and skedaddled. I don't blame him. The Refreshment Lady's Tea Shop. The tea coach is based on the Tallyclin Railway's carriage number 7. The coach was originally an open carriage from the Penryn Quarry Railway, and was later converted into a mobile refreshment stand, parked at Abergynolwyn Station from 1963 to 1968. By 1986, it was completely rebuilt as a wheelchair-compatible saloon coach, and runs as so today. The Spotless Record. This is the final episode in which an engine says the infamous beep beep.
Beep beep! What a mess, Puff Thomas.
This is only the case in the UK dub though. In the US, the line is not present and changed to,
"Oh, Arthur, what a mess, Puff Thomas."
Toby's Windmill. In this shot of Toby, Toby's driver's head is digitally added in, using the head from the previous close-up of him. Not exactly sure why this was done. If I had to guess, they shot the scene not realizing that the driver's figure's head was missing, and did some post-production editing magic to fix the mistake. Bad Day at Castle Lock. As many of these Season 6 and 7 episode titles are, this one is also in reference to a movie, the 1955 film noir western Bad Day at Black Rock. Rheneas and the Roller Coaster. As shown in the storyboards by Robert Galliers, this episode was originally going to star Peter Sam, but was changed to Rheneas later on for unknown reasons. The plot was slightly different too, with Peter Sam wanting to get the job over with to go back to doing more important work. Salty's Stormy Tale. Emily was meant to appear in the final scene of this episode, passing Salty and Fergus as they enter the docks. You can just make out her buffer coming into view right before the shot cuts. The shot was reused in the 5 New Engines in the Shed music video. It's unknown exactly what the context of the scene was, but likely tied back to her earlier scene of feeling bad for Salty, and possibly congratulating the two for their heroics. Snow Engine. The giant top hat on the snowman, and later on Oliver, is actually one of the close-up scale props of Sir Topham Hatt's top hat. Such a clever reuse of props, and really puts into perspective how much larger the close-up scale human figures were than the Gauge 1 engines themselves. Something fishy. The original title of this episode was Gone Fishing, as shown in the copyright notice of a book adaptation. Funnily enough, there would be an episode called Gone Fishing later on in Season 17, and not to mention the music video also called Gone Fishing from Season 4. The Runaway Elephant. For some unknown reason, Britt Allcroft is omitted from the opening credits of this episode and Rheneas and the Roller Coaster. The Based on the Railway series by Reverend Wilbert Audrey credit stays on screen for longer, and then the shot cuts to the episode's title card. The Created for Television by Britt Allcroft credit never appearing. It's possible that this was just an editing mistake, as all other Season 7 episodes do properly credit her. Peace and Quiet. The Story Library book adaptation of this episode features Salty and Harvey coming to Murdoch's rescue instead of Toby. The events play out a little differently here. Murdoch being stopped for so long by the sheep caused his fire to go out, and Salty and Harvey were brought along to tow him home. This may have been pulled from an earlier draft of the episode, which would better explain Murdoch's changed opinion of the two at the end.
I'm sorry that I was cross, he chuffed. I'm very pleased to share a shed with you.
Fergus Breaks the Rules. This episode was featured on the UK Hit Favorites DVD, The Groovy Collection, alongside episodes from several of Hit Entertainment's shows. Fascinatingly though, it features the US dub with Michael Brandon narrating, the only time his dub was released officially on any UK home media. Bulgy Rides Again. An unused shot from Season 3's Bulgy is used here during the flashback to that episode. This overhead shot of Bulgy stuck under the bridge. Pretty neat to see unused footage so many years later. Harold and the Flying Horse. Digital rushing water effects were added to this stock footage from Season 4's Trucks. The addition was pretty futile though, as it is mostly only visible in the 4x3 full screen edit. The shot is cropped in the 16:9 widescreen version. The Grand Opening. The hot air balloon pilot is Tiger Moth's pilot from Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday in Season 5. His face paint remains unchanged from that season. Best Dressed Engine. The pipe organ on Thomas's flatbed is Headmaster Hastings' organ from Faulty Whistles, repainted. The organ was built to scale with the larger narrow gauge engine props, so it is quite out of scale here. Just look how tall it is. Gordon and Spencer. As revealed by writer Lee Pressman on the Jack's Throwback Attack podcast, his time writing this episode was horrible. Every time he sent in a new draft of the script, the show sent it back and demanded changes. He didn't write again for Thomas after this experience. However, 10 seasons later, he was asked back to write for the CGI series, and as all the crew during season 7 had gone by this point, he took on the job. He ended up writing 24 more episodes across seasons 17 to 22, and he quite enjoyed it. Not so hasty puddings. The shot of Elizabeth's wheels sliding on the ice was accomplished by placing her on a board and sliding that down the hill. Snow is used to hide the board's edges. The shot occurs too quickly to really notice, but on playback, it's pretty obvious that she's on something. Trusty Rusty. For some reason, the US dub of this episode reuses a line. When Rusty warns the engines about the bridge, he says,
"Don't use the old wooden bridge," said Rusty. "It's dangerous."
And later on, right after he rescues Duncan, the same take of that line is replayed.
"Don't use the old wooden bridge," said Rusty. "It's dangerous."
And at such an inappropriate moment of the story, I have to guess that this was a weird editing mistake. It does not occur at all in the UK dub.
The little diesel pulled him off the bridge just in time.
3 cheers for Thomas. Miss Jenny can be seen on Maithwaite's platform in the final scene, waving at, well, nothing. This is a pretty clear indicator that this scene was shot at the same time as the scene for the Pack episode, A Visit from Thomas, when she stands on the platform and waves at Thomas departing. Jack and the Sodor Construction Company. Alfie has kittens. All of the pack-scale Thomas's faces from the 2 pilot episodes in Season 6 were disused following complaints from the crew about them not looking right. I can't say I blame them. All new, much more accurate ones were made during production of this spin-off series. His original sad face, however, does pop up in this one shot.
"What's wrong?" he asked.
Jack owns up. The gantry crane used in the warehouse yard here is a sized-up pack-scale recreation of the gantry crane first seen back in The Flying Kipper. Amazing how many props they recreated in this larger scale, only to ever be used once. On site with Thomas. Many of the original titles of these Pack episodes are references to old movies and TV shows. The original title of this episode was Who's the Boss?, in reference to the 1984 sitcom. A Visit from Thomas. Despite Thomas's name being in the title, Thomas does not speak at all in this episode, nor is his face ever shown on camera. This episode is about Oliver, and Thomas's role is rather unimportant to the overall plot here, as supported by the episode's original title, Oliversaurus. Mud, Glorious Mud. This episode's title is a reference to the lyrics of the Flanders and Swan song, the Hippopotamus Song.
Mud, mud, glorious mud, nothing quite like it for cooling the blood. So follow me, follow, down to the hollow, and there let us wallow in glorious mud.
Alfie also references the title in another episode.
"Mud! Glorious mud!" Alfie shouted as he spun around.
Thomas and the Moles. Flying Scotsman appears in this episode, in the form of a poster seen on the wall of the Pack's yard. This LNER poster specifically from 1932, which depicts Scotsman at a coaling tower. The Tortoise and the Hare. Several real-life posters appear on the billboards at the racetrack. This one here is of a Renault R8 Gordini. And this one here is a 1933 Wimbledon poster designed by André-Edouard Marty, specifically to be used in the advertising panels on the London Underground. Percy's Scary Tale. This episode, along with Jack Owns Up, were never released on physical home media in widescreen in the US or the UK. The widescreen versions of these episodes only surfaced when they were put up for streaming with the rest of the Pack episodes. They are currently up for digital download on Amazon UK. Kelly's Windy Day. This episode's original title was 5 Easy Pieces, a seemingly unusual title for a story about Kelly losing his confidence. 5 Easy Pieces is a 1970 film about a pianist prodigy, and in this episode, Isabella was delivering a piano before crashing.
Oh dear, be careful.
Percy helps out. The bridge that Nelson travels under here is actually the viaduct from Thomas and the Magic Railroad reused. It gives you a good idea of how much larger the pack props are than the standard gauge 1 ones. A happy day for Percy. In this shot, you can see something through Kelly's windshield inside his cab here. It appears to be a barcode of some sort. Perhaps the barcode sticker on the motor used to move Kelly's eyes? Not too sure what that is. Thomas's trusty friends. The big spectacle scene of the chimney collapsing could only be done in a single take. As model crew member Chris Lloyds talked about in his interview with SIF, the buildings here were all made of plaster, with the warehouse building rigged with strings attached to the walls. When the chimney fell on it and pushed down onto the strings, they pulled the inside walls in, causing them to collapse inward. He also stated that there was a near miss right before filming. They were about to drop the chimney when one of the camera boys shouted, "Stop! Camera failure!" Just imagine if they had let that chimney go and none of it was captured on film. A tale for Thomas. Some photos exist from this episode showing Thomas pulling Jack and Alfie with a worried expression. This never actually occurs in the episode, and it may be evidence of a scene that was trimmed out. Perhaps the context is Thomas worrying or wondering why the tree is so special, hence why he asks the pack later why it's called the lightning tree. Season 8. Thomas and the Firework Display. This episode is themed around Guy Fawkes Night, also known as Bonfire Night in the UK. It is never directly stated though, likely so the episode could be localized in other countries with their own fireworks nights, such as 4th of July in the US. There would be other Guy Fawkes Night themed episodes later on in the series though, such as Season 17's Too Many Fire Engines, and Season 22's Samson and the Fireworks. Percy's new whistle. Birdie's eyes move in this episode after he crashes. The prop was not fitted with an iMech at this point, so they are animated digitally. The effect was not all that great in the episode's original release, as seen here.
Percy! He cried crossly.
Ugh. It was redone later on, prior to its release on the complete Series 8 DVD. Fish. The pack scale Thomas is used for this medium shot when the fish from his trucks splatter onto him. Note how the slime on him changes between shots. Emily's adventure. There's some clever setup here. This episode establishes that Emily sleeps at Knapford Sheds, separate from everyone else. This is a plot point that would be touched on again in Calling All Engines, when Thomas temporarily moves in with her. She later would leave Knapford Sheds and joins the others at the new Tidmouth Sheds. Thomas saves the day. A deleted scene reveals that Gordon and Henry were meant to appear in this episode. Thomas, looking depressed, presumably is telling them about how he will have to make do around the difficult bend without Annie and Clarabelle. Going by their facial expressions, Henry seems supportive, while Gordon could care less. Squeak, rattle, and roll. This episode features the final appearances of some of Gordon's faces, including this surprised face, this embarrassed face, and this tired, pondering face. The latter does appear in Calling All Engines for a split second here, but this is its final appearance in an episode. Thomas, Emily, and the Snowplow. This episode marks the first time that Thomas's yawning face was used since the very first episode. It appears one more time after this, in Chickens to School this same season. I just love that a toy with this weird face exists. Edward the Great. Donald and Douglas appear in a deleted scene, as shown in the World Around You music video. They appear at the foot of Gordon's Hill, cheering Edward on as he makes his ascend. Their dialogue was revealed in the Spencer's Story Library book, which was based on this episode.
But Donald and Douglas were waiting at the junction. They had heard about the race. "Hooray for Edward!" cried Donald. "He's a first-rate engine," added Douglas. This made Edward feel much better.
Spick and span. The Fat Controller and the Inspector's eyes are digitally edited in the shot when they get covered in coal to keep the white of their eyes visible.
Sorry, cough Gordon.
James goes too far. A photo from this episode, this one specifically, is seen framed on the wall of Sir Topham's office in the CGI series. Although, for unknown reasons, James's face has been edited out of it. He has a photo of Emily from Emily's New Route on the wall as well. And, again, her face is edited out. A little creepy, not gonna lie. Thomas gets it right. This is the only episode of the main series written by Robin Rigby. He previously wrote 2 episodes for Jack in the Pack, Treasure Hunt and Safety First, both of which were dropped and never got made. You can do it, Toby. In this episode, Toby does it. Thanks, Mads. Donald and Douglas get out of the blue mentions in this one.
And slate cars for Donald. He even shunted fruit and vegetable cars for Douglas.
Not counting their deleted scene from Edward the Great, this is their only acknowledgement of existing in the hit era, until their reappearances in Season 11's Gordon and the Engineer. Percy and the Magic Carpet. This is Steve Asquith's favorite episode that he directed. According to him, the magic carpet was originally going to be a CGI element, but they ended up using a physical carpet filmed on a green screen. He was particularly proud of how well the green screen effect turned out. It is also the favorite episode of writer Abby Grant, an episode that she, quote, had to fight all the way to the top to get made. Hit Entertainment apparently objected to the notion of magic being present in this, but she eventually won them over. Thomas and the Circus. Caroline appears in the row of cars at Marin Station, as can be seen here. Toad also appears in this episode, as the circus train's brake van. Percy's big mistake. The tar that splatters on Gordon here is actually gravy. Don't tell Thomas. String is used in this shot to pull Thomas through the snowdrift without sticking. I always wondered how the prop was able to move through that drift without stopping. Emily's New Route. As revealed in the book adaptation, this episode originally opened on a different scene that was totally cut. Emily is bored shunting trucks at Brendam Docks, and Salty tries to cheer her up with one of his stories. He states, "It's about a lighthouse, a box of oranges, and a fishing rod. It all started when..." A shot of Salty from this scene was reused in the music video, Trying. Chickens to School. According to a magazine poster, the sheep farmer that Thomas collects the sheep from here is named Farmer Collette. His figure is made up of using the sea captain's body from Salty's Stormy Tale and the head of a railway board member. Gordon takes charge. As stated on a production list from this season, this episode's working title was Gordon and the Snow Gala. Thomas and the Tuba. The regular smaller Gauge 1 Trevor is used throughout this episode, except for his one close-up here, where the larger pack-scale Trevor is used instead. They likely used this here so Trevor's eyes could be seen moving. Henry and the Wishing Tree. This episode features the only appearance of the Express's buffet coach. Reference photos show the prop more clearly. It features larger windows than the normal coaches, and the word buffet printed on its side in white. Too hot for Thomas. Thomas's truck of cocoa powder exploding was accomplished by fixing a tube under the track and pushing air through it when the truck was above it. During the explosion, if you look closely, you can see the ballast on the track there getting blown upwards from it. James gets a new coat. The 2003 Writer's Bible by Abby Grant features an early story concept that eventually became this episode. In this early version, Percy's role was played by Edward, and it was trucks of slate dust that dirtied James's paint instead of coal. Thomas to the rescue. In most dubs, a music cue plays when Salty announces that the fuel has arrived.
Ahoy there, me hearties! Fresh diesel from the mainland!
In the original US TV airing and on the Greatest Stories DVD, the music cue is inexplicably missing.
Ahoy there, me hearties! Fresh diesel from the mainland!
As Good as Gordon. Gordon's front bogey wheels are derailed throughout the entire opening scene of this episode. Once you notice it, you can't unnotice it, and it becomes rather distracting. I just can't stop looking at them. They're derailed. How did they not notice this? Halloween. The original US dub of this episode featured a different ending than all others. In the UK and most other dubs, the episode ends like this.
They knew there was nothing to be scared of. After all, there is no such thing as ghosts. It was all silly make-believe.
In the US dub, the shots used are different, and it never reveals the ghost in the scrapyard.
They knew there was nothing to be scared of. After all, there is no such thing as ghosts. It was all silly make-believe.
This may have been done in an attempt to not confuse younger viewers about ghosts existing. However, this change has been reversed since. When this episode was put out on various US Hit Favorites DVDs, the original ending is present.
They knew there was nothing to be scared of. After all, there is no such thing as ghosts. It was all silly make-believe.
Season 9. Thomas and the Rainbow. From this episode onwards, the entire cast of the Japanese dub changed. This occurred due to Thomas and friends switching to a new broadcasting station in Japan after Season 8, and thus, a new production company was brought in to dub the series. Kamiko Higa, Thomas's new voice actress, has stated that this is her favorite episode, as it was the first one that she voiced Thomas in. Respect for Gordon. Sweet chili sauce was used for the jam that splatters onto Gordon. Man, first gravy, and now chili sauce. What's next for him? Molly's special. Photos reveal that Thomas was meant to meet Molly for the first time at a junction. Gordon passes them at the junction, insulting Molly's unremarkable cargo. Molly races off ashamed, and after that Thomas notices tarpaulins hanging on scaffolding nearby. After that, he would have rushed to find Molly at the flour mill and suggests the idea of covering her trucks with tarps to fool the others. The scene is present in Molly's story library book.
What's the matter? Puffed Thomas.
Emily made fun of me because I have to take empty trucks to the coaling plant,
replied Molly sadly. Just then, the signal turned to red. Gordon thundered past with the express. You wait there, he chuffed. My express is more important than your empty trucks. Molly chugged off very sadly. As Thomas wondered what he could do, the wind blew up over some containers covered in tarpaulin. The tarpaulin began to rustle. That's it, puffed Thomas happily. He raced off to find Molly.
This scene is entirely trimmed out of the final episode, and the scene at the flour mill was rewritten to Thomas meeting Molly there for the first time. However, the shot of Thomas noticing the tarps at the junction is still used here, though cleverly they chose to use a rear angle shot to hide the fact that they're not on the flour mill set. The difference is obvious when comparing the two shots side by side. In this wide shot, the Sodor flour mill sign is beside Thomas, and in the tarps shot, instead a signal is next to him. Mighty Mac. The camping ground's flag is actually a maritime flag. Its meaning is Man Overboard. Thomas's milkshake model. The model crew loved using real railway posters as set dressing during the hit era. In this episode, a LMS poster is seen on the side of Maithwaite Station. It's this one specifically, a 1937 poster titled Scott Passes Scott, illustrated by Brian de Grenou. Percy and the oil painting. When Sir Topham arrives at Knapford to speak to the famous artist, he inexplicably has a dinner napkin tucked into his shirt that's never addressed. A deleted scene revealed that he was having tea when he got the call about the commotion at Knapford and hurried over mid-meal. Thomas and the birthday picnic. Thomas only shows the Hat family 2 potential picnic spots before giving up and heading back home. There was a third one originally that was filmed and cut for time, Bluffs Cove. As revealed in a magazine story, Thomas brought the family here only to find out the beach was closed due to the rain. Shots from this scene were reused in the music video, Every Day is Special on Sodor. Toby feels left out. For unknown reasons, Toby pulls a unique brown and white four-wheel brake coach at the end of this episode instead of Henrietta. The coach only appears in this episode and never again. Interestingly, Bachmann produced this coach in their 00 and G-Scale Thomas lines, in which they called it Toby's Museum Coach. They also produced a fictional matching composite coach to go with it. Bold and brave. The shot of Harold flying away from Thomas was reused in the music video, One Friendly Family. But as Thomas was sad in that shot, they edited a happy expression onto him and digitally changed his eye positions. I'm pretty sure this is what my sleep paralysis demon looks like. Tuneful Toots. The original US dub of this episode, and Duncan and the Old Mine, refer to Rusty as female.
Rusty's favorite journey was by the lake. She liked to toot her horn there, but Rusty was most excited of all. She loved the sound of a brass band.
This change stemmed from the 2003 Writer's Bible by Abby Grant, in which Rusty was referred to as she. Now, I've always thought this was a deliberate attempt to add a girl character to the narrow gauge cast, but looking at the Writer's Bible again, the word she is only used once here, and now I'm genuinely wondering if this was just a typo that was never caught. Regardless, Hit quickly realized the mistake and had Michael Brandon re-narrate all the lines referring to Rusty as female to male prior to the episode's release on home media.
Rusty's favorite journey was by the lake. He liked to toot his horn there, but Rusty was most excited of all. He loved the sounds of a brass band.
Flower Power. 2 versions of the opening scene were filmed. The final episode sees the Fat Controller dressed as a wizard for Halloween. An alternate version was initially filmed depicting him in a devil costume. According to Sean Hedges Quinn, the head sculptor for the series, the devil totem was cut by the American market because it portrayed Satan and was considered inappropriate for a children's TV show. You cannot make this stuff up. Photos of the deleted scene exist, and the devil totem figure is currently in possession of Quinn himself. Rheneas and the Dinosaur. The Stegosaurus skeleton prop from this episode does still exist, and was recently auctioned on the prop store last November to an unknown buyer. Henry and the Flagpole. A giant close-up Salty was constructed in Season 8 for scenes where people had to be shown in his cab. It had a full interior with controls and everything. For this episode, the prop was given a chassis with moving wheels, specifically for the close-up shot of him running over the flagpole.
Oops, sorry, matey, called Salty.
The shot occurs so quickly that it's hard to notice, but the prop does not have a front buffer beam. Thomas and the New Engine. Look closely in this shot of Neville racing past McColl Farm. Right before the shot fades to the next, you can just make out Thomas coming into frame in the background. As filmed, the shot was Thomas chasing after Neville to warn him about the bridge, but was trimmed down for time. Emily Knows Best. Toby damages his front cowcatchers in this episode. Funnily enough, he damaged his rear ones earlier this same season in Toby Feels Left Out. And interestingly, they don't reuse the same damaged cowcatcher prop here. They're totally separate ones. What are the odds that Toby would mangle his cowcatchers twice in the same season? Thomas's New Trucks. This is the only time that Harvey is depicted with a claw in an episode. His claw does reappear in a learning segment in Season 10. Kinda wish that they utilized this in the CGI series. I'm chuckling at the idea of Harvey operating his claw in the same way Diesel 10 does Pinchy. The Magic Lamp. The hanging lamp that Peter Sam passes is hung on one of the Dryaw Airfield hangar huts. A large-scale prop of the hut appears in this close-up. Now, this large-scale prop was originally built by Clearwater Features for a 1982 ad for KP Nuts, directed by David Mitton.
KP dry roasted peanuts, because the nut must go on!
The props were later repurposed for Thomas the following year, with the rear open end of the large-scale one consistently being used as the air hanger at Dryaw. This episode is the only one in which the front of the larger-scale hut, as seen in the KP Nuts commercial, appears in the show. Thomas and the Toy Shop. This is the only episode that this abnormally narrow tunnel set appears in. The set was built specifically for the learning segment, Which Load for Which Route, in which Edward attempted to take a wide load through the tunnel, and obviously failed. Saving Edward. An alternate take of Edward reversing onto his trucks at Brendam was used in a Sodor's Special Places segment on Brendam Docks. I would consider this an outtake, for it features a pretty glaring mistake. Yeah, Cranky is missing. How do you miss him? Gotta wonder how this happened. Thomas tries his best. A deleted scene took place after Thomas attempted to race Gordon. In it, he tries to pawn off his job onto Emily. The scene was cut for time, but nearly the entire thing was reused in a Sodor Special Places segment. Emily raced off with Thomas's chicken cars, scaring the chickens aboard, and Thomas chased after her to tell her to slow down. Duncan and the Old Mine. Thomas is seen with his green trucks at the transfer yard here. This is some subtle continuity with Thomas's new trucks from earlier this season, in which he gained his own rake of green trucks. Although, to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure if this was intentional or not. Thomas's day off. Dennis is introduced in this episode, and he is depicted as quite a lazy character that doesn't like to pull trains, or really do any type of work. Dennis was based on the experimental number 11001, first built in 1949. His lazy work ethic with pulling trains may have been inspired by 11001's own shortcomings. The locomotive was designed to shunt and haul short-distance trains. However, it was only fitted with air brakes, and it was not well suited to braking trains. 11001 was unconventional, and after a gearbox failure in 1958, was scrapped not long after that, only serving about 10 years. Keeping up with James. Percy's snowplow here is Ducks, from Season 6's Toby Had a Little Lamb. Thomas and the Statue. Several copies of the Steam Team statue were produced at the end of Season 9's production as thank you gifts to the crew members. Some have been sold online, including one that was recently sold on the prop store last November. Skarloey the Brave. This episode is the only one that shows the narrow gauge engines can access the top of the incline via a track that goes up the mountain. This sort of begs the question what exactly the point of the incline is at all, if the trains can easily access the top point. Whatever, this episode is one of the worst ever. Who really cares? Thomas and the Golden Eagle. The birds seen on the power lines in the opening of this episode are a reference to the Pixar short For the Birds, featuring a giant bird in the middle holding down the power line. The birds are purposely not shown from the front, and as this photo of them shows, it's pretty clear why. They are quite cartoony in their appearance. I personally like this guy the best. Season 10. Thomas and the Jet Plane. Jeremy the Jet is introduced in this episode, and he went through several design iterations. One of his earliest designs featured his nose as an actual giant nose. Just look at that schnoz. Writer Abby Grant stated that this episode was one of the hardest to write because it was difficult to come up with ways to make Thomas and a plane interact. But as Jeremy's prop was already built, she had to think of something. After learning this, it should be no shock that Jeremy never spoke again after this episode. There's just no easy way for a train and a plane to have a conversation. A smooth ride. Sir Handel makes his big return to the series in this episode after a 5-season absence. He gained a new larger scale model here, complete with new faces designed by Sean Hedges Quinn. As he states, Sir Handel was his least favorite of all the trains, because he just had a bit of a meh face. A little plain. Follow That Flower. This episode primarily features the Gauge 3 narrow gauge scale Thomas and James. Some Gauge 3 trucks with faces appear in this, but because they are so much larger than the standard Gauge 1 trucks, they use van faces. Very clever reuse of assets here. Percy and the Fun Fair. The scenes of Percy meeting up with Toby and Edward were all reshot. The original versions featured Toby and Edward with standard trucks with gray tarps. The scenes were reshot with their wagons now becoming multicolored, with colorful tarps covering them, likely to make their trains appear more fun and special in comparison to Percy's boring coal trucks. A few photos exist of the original scenes. Duncan drops a clanger. Alright, I really struggled with this one. I could not, for the life of me, think of anything interesting to say about this episode. I have found that the most notable thing about it is that it's the only episode this season that Thomas does not appear in. So, that's something, I guess. Toby's afternoon off. Toby asks Salty for help at one point, and Salty declines and leaves. In the following shot, after he rolls away, you can just make out him stopping at the edge of the set before the shot cuts. This is only really visible in the 16:9 widescreen version. Thomas's Tricky Tree. Like Follow That Flower, this episode primarily takes place at the wharf and features the Gauge 3 narrow gauge scale Thomas. Only so many Gauge 3 wharf sets were built, so specifically for this one shot of Thomas being diverted onto a siding, a Gauge 1 wharf set was built. The main giveaway that this set is Gauge 1 is the faceless horrid lorries in the top right. It's good to be Gordon. There is an amazing outtake from this episode that I'm sure you all have seen. The mechanism used to make Henry plume black smoke malfunctioned and exploded inside his tender.
But then it was time for Gordon to leave. Hooray for Gordon! Wheezed Henry.
R.I.P. Henry's Fireman. Emily and the Special Coaches. Gordon's special blue coaches were actually constructed all the way back during the production of Season 7 to be used as Spencer's coaches. They were dropped before filming, opting to use the pair of maroon special coaches for him instead. The blue coaches went unused until this season, when this episode was written around them being presented to Gordon here for breaking his speed record. And we never see them again after this. I did try to cross-reference this fact, but I could not find the original source of it. The wiki was no help, so take this one with a grain of salt. If you do know the source of this fact, please comment it below. Topped off Thomas. A lot of face trivia in this episode specifically. This mad face that Thomas wears here only appears in this episode. It was a mad face sculpted for him all the way back in Season 2 that went unused. Spencer's clenched face is used for the first and only time here, of which was sculpted back in Season 7. And this episode also marks the final appearance of Thomas's rather memorable, tired expression, sculpted back in Season 1. Fearless Freddy. Freddy is introduced in this episode. He is based on Russell, a 262 narrow gauge locomotive that currently resides on the Welsh Highland Heritage Railway in Porthmadog, Wales. The Skarloey engines are all notoriously based on the engines of the Tallyclyn Railway, and Russell has a connection with it. In 1953, Russell suffered severe damage to one of its axles, which led to its withdrawal from service. It was preserved by the Birmingham Locomotive Society, who then moved it to the newly preserved Tallyclyn Railway, where it was left on static display at Wharf Station while work was done. There, Russell remained for about 10 years or so, until being donated to the Welsh Highland Railway in 1965. Sticky Toffee Thomas. Some props from past episodes appear on the picnic table at the costume contest, including the first place ribbon from Season 8's Spick and Span, and a Topham medal from Season 7's 3 Cheers for Thomas. Random aside here, but I just think it's so funny that Topham put his own face on a medal to be given at a sports day event. Like, congrats kid, here's a medal with my face on it. Thanks, I guess? Big Strong Henry. The leaked script for this episode features some small differences from what was filmed. One of my favorite bits is here. Gordon scoffs, "Big Strong Henry? Huh, I'll believe it when I see it." And in response, Thomas says, "You will see it." And then he chuffs off and blows smoke in Gordon's face. Gordon wheezes in response. Great use of cheeky Thomas there. In the final episode, Gordon makes his remarks, and then he leaves the shed before anyone else. Not as fun. Seeing the sights. Salty has dialogue in the leaked script for this episode. As Thomas arrives at the docks, he shouts, "Ahoy there, me hearty! Your passengers are waiting for ye!" as they pass each other. His dialogue is omitted in the final episode, and the two simply pass each other in silence. Thomas and the Shooting Star. Thomas makes some indirect references to past episodes when thinking about what to wish for. He says,
"Never to have to work with Diesel again."
which refers to Season 9's Flower Power and Season 8's Thomas to the Rescue.
Or never wearing my snowplow,
which refers to Season 1's Thomas, Terrence, and the Snow, Season 6's It's Only Snow, and Season 8's Thomas, Emily, and the Snowplow.
Or never having to pull smelly fish,
which refers to Season 8's Fish. Which way now? Smaller Gauge 1 figures are used in the foreground of this shot to imply distance and make the bridge seem taller. It does inadvertently make Rusty look ginormous compared to them though. Toby's new shed. When watched in production order, this is the first appearance of Arlesdale End Station since Season 1. Toby's lone shed has been seen many times since Season 5, but this is the first time it is seen on the new Arlesdale End set. This remains consistent following this episode, even into the CGI series. Edward strikes out. In the original script, Edward's load was telegraph poles, all of which topple out of the trucks when he stops at a red signal. For whatever reason, this was changed to pipes in the final episode. Thomas's frosty friend. The giant pack scale Thomas is used for the shot of the balloon's ropes attaching themselves to his rear buffers. Wharf and Peace. An entirely new body shell of Skarloey with a dented saddle tank was built for this episode, for the scene when logs ram into him and damage him. Thomas and the Colors. James gets decorated with football flags in this episode. Wooden Railway produced this variant of James in their 2007 Adventures of James pack called James with Team Colors. Unfortunately, this was one of the products that was recalled that same year during the whole lead paint fiasco, a recall that saw most Wooden Railway toys with red paint produced between 2005 and then to have lead in the paint. So if you own this version of James, you probably shouldn't lick it. Missing Trucks. This episode was retitled Missing Cars for the US dub. When put on home media, it was inexplicably changed to Missing Freight Cars. Despite this, Michael Brandon still reads the title as Missing Cars.
Missing Cars.
What was the point of this change exactly? Thomas and the Birthday Mail. The theme used for Rosie here is actually a repurposed theme that first appeared back in Calling All Engines.
Next, Thomas and Percy had to go to the smelter's yard. Rosie was a cheerful, chirpy little tank engine. She was always pleased to meet Thomas.
This one-off theme ended up becoming Rosie's main theme, and is reused for her in all of her following major appearances. Duncan's Bluff. An outtake of this shot exists. As seen in the Season 10 blooper reel, James's eyes were positioned incorrectly, so his pupils fell below his cheeks, resulting in completely all-white eyes. It's okay, I didn't need to sleep tonight anyway. Thomas and the Treasure. The leaked script of this episode again reveals some differences from the final episode. In the script, it says Thomas circles Black Lock while looking for the third clue. As he circles, he hears helicopter rotor blades above him. Harold is following him and eventually lands to speak to him. In the final episode, this scene was cut, and it simply fades to Harold landing near him. The Black Lock scene was filmed though, and a shot of Harold following Thomas around the lock was reused in the music video, H is for Harold. The Green Controller. In this episode, Lady Hack gives Percy orders while Topham is ill. She pulls out a piece of paper with instructions. The paper she holds appears to be clipped from a production note sheet. The words Thomas and Friends can be made out at the top, with Friends cut off after the R. The word crew can be made out here, and the rest is illegible. James the Second Best. One may wonder how exactly James's face was able to crash through the billboard, but his buffer beam didn't. We know the actual reason is because it would spoil the funny visual of only James's face poking through the billboard. But how did they accomplish this? For the front shots, James's body was removed from his chassis and propped up behind the billboard on blocks. For the rear shots though, his whole body with his chassis is present, and you can clearly see his buffer beam crash through the billboard in these. Thomas and Skarloey's Big Day Out. This is probably one of the most innovative episodes of the show from a production standpoint. This episode seamlessly cuts between the Gauge 1 Thomas and Skarloey on Gauge 1 sets, and the larger Gauge 3 props on Gauge 3 sets. For all wide shots on the Gauge 1 sets, Skarloey's smaller O-scale Season 4 prop is used, and whenever a close-up of Skarloey is required, they cut to the larger Gauge 3 prop. The set that Skarloey crashes on was built twice, once in Gauge 1 for the crash itself, and again in Gauge 3 for the conversation after that he and Thomas have. Brilliant stuff. Season 11. Hide and Peep. This is the first episode shot in 1080p high definition. The intro sequence, the Welcome to the Island of Sodor sequence, the end credits, and the engine roll call were all reshot in their entirety to match the episodes. Gordon and the Engineer. Photos from this episode suggest the scene of Gordon passing Henry was filmed twice. The original version took place on this set that looks like an approach to Meron. In the final episode, it occurs on this different mainline set on a curve. Thomas sets sail. The sailboat prop built for this episode was recreated in CGI by Nitrogen Studios. It does not appear in any episodes as far as I know, but it does appear out at sea in the Welcome to Sodor intro sequence. Emily's Rubbish. Salty was meant to appear in this episode, but was cut for unknown reasons. He was present at the shunting yards when Emily first met Whiff, as these photos show. Poor Salty, man, he was cut from so many of these hit-era episodes. Dream On. Thomas wears the Duke and Duchess of Boxford's coat of arms in this episode. The coat of arms is made up of a white shield with a blue band, a fleur-de-lis in the top right, and what appears to be a crown on the bottom left. I am not at all an expert in what colors and symbols on coat of arms represent. Would love for someone to decode this. Cool Truckings. Duncan spends most of this episode on Madge's flatbed. For this, a lightweight, all-resin replica of Duncan was built to accomplish some of the stunt sequences. The main giveaway between the regular Duncan and the resin Duncan are the side rods. The resin ones are a lot duller and don't have that same shine to them. The resin Duncan is currently in possession of prop archivist's Thomas Tank merch. Thomas and the Spaceship. There's a notable difference between dubs in Percy's dialogue when he first meets Thomas. In the UK, he says,
"Hello, Thomas. Percy peeped. Thank you for coming to help me."
In the US dub, he only says,
"Hello," he peeped happily.
And then awkward silence. The audio sounds chopped to me, like Brandon said the whole line, but then they cut it after he said hello. I can only speculate that Brandon may have said the line too long, and it didn't fit the shot before it cut to the next, so they shortened it. Hector the Horrid. As is the case with a few other episodes this season, several shots of this episode were reshot for unknown reasons. The most notable is Hector's crash. In the original version that aired on TV, Hector hits the buffers, and then he falls over. In the reshot version, he bounces upwards after colliding, and then tumbles over. The original version aired on TV back in 2007, and the reshot versions are all present on most home media. I don't know the concrete reason why certain scenes were reshot this season. I think the original version of the crash looked better, to be honest. Thomas and the Storyteller. In this shot of the storyteller reading to kids at school, she is actually holding a script to an episode. Its format matches the leaked Season 10 scripts, with stage directions on the left and narration on the right. Unfortunately, it's hard to make out what episode's script is used here. Likely, it's the script for this episode. Skarloey storms through. The farmer that calls out to Skarloey uses an unrepainted figurehead all the way back from Season 4. The giveaway here is the eyes. It's the head of this driver figure specifically. Thomas and the Lighthouse. The lighthouse keeper here is Cyril the Fogman from Season 6's The Fogman. I guess he upgraded professions between seasons. Sir Handel in charge. The main theme used all the way back in Season 7's Bill, Ben, and Fergus was repurposed here as Sir Handel's theme.
Fergus is a small railway traction engine who works on the island of Sodor.
Sir Handel in charge. Sir Handel is one of the oldest engines in the hills of Sodor.
Smoke and Mirrors. Elizabeth appears briefly in this episode, and seems to wear an unused grinning, cheeky face. Now she has actually worn it once in the past. She is wearing it in this shot from Elizabeth the Vintage Lori in Season 6, though is so far away from the camera that it's hard to make out. Henry's Lucky Day. Henry's original Perspex prop from Season 1 is paired with the tender of his new brass prop from Season 10 in this episode. The color differences between the two are quite noticeable. The new brass Henry is a much brighter green. Don't Be Silly Billy. This episode, as well as Thomas and the Stinky Cheese, was to be recreated fully in CGI by Stardust Pictures to test the potential of the series in the new medium. Storyboards by Dino at Tennessee were drawn up and exist online on his website, but no actual footage of the CGI tests from this episode have surfaced, if they even exist. Toby's Triumph. When the workmen clean Toby, they whistle while they work.
Soon the workmen were whistling.
The tune they whistle is Toby's theme. Now if I had to take a guess, the man whistling here is probably the show's composer, Robert Hartshorn, who created the theme. Thomas and the Runaway Car. Sir Topham gets a new car in this episode. Now for anyone keeping track, this is his 5th car in the TV series. The first appeared only in Season 1 and looked like this, with the headlights on top of the fenders. From Seasons 2 to 4, he had a different car, which looked like this. In Season 3, he is shown to have a black car in some episodes. In Season 5, he gained his more recognizable car, which loosely resembles a Rover P4. And in this episode, he replaces that car with this one, which is virtually identical to the previous. Edward and the Mail. A photo from this episode shows an alternate take of one of the opening shots. Instead of Edward banking James up Gordon's Hill, they are instead double-heading the train, with Edward at the front. Getting some nice James and the Coaches vibes from this. Thomas and the Big Bang. This episode features the 3rd time that James has spun out of control on a turntable. The first time occurred in Season 1's Tenders and Turntables, the second in Season 3's Buzz Buzz, and now here. James and turntables don't mix very well, do they? Wash behind your buffers. Madge's shocked face has a pink tongue painted on it. For some unknown reason, it was digitally painted out in this shot.
Oh no, cried Madge.
The tongue does appear in the original version of this episode, as released on the US Engines and Escapades DVD.
Oh no, cried Madge. Now you're both dirtier than ever.
What was the point of removing this exactly? Thomas in trouble. The shot of Salty shunting at Brendam is, for some reason, mirrored. Cranky and Big Mickey are in different positions as a result. Here is what it should look like. Dirty Work. This episode features several reshoots. For the reshoots, Callan Castle and Knapford Station shared the same set to speed up production. In this shot of James leaving the castle, you can clearly see Knapford Station's shadow on the ground, of which is not present in this shot, which is from the original shoot. Duncan Does It All. This episode features the first and only ever appearance of Annie and Clarabelle's larger Gauge 3 props. We never really get a good look at them here, but we did get to see them in full in 2021 when they were put on display with Thomas at the Clearwater event at the Midland Railway Center. Percy and the Left Luggage. This episode features the only known use of Jeremy's close-up prop, which appears in this shot behind Dowager Hat. I don't think we've ever seen photos of it in full, but likely only this small portion of his entry doors was built. Ding-a-ling. My other sleep paralysis demon, Cuffy the Clown, appears in this episode. His prop was first built all the way back for Season 8's Thomas and the Circus, and would later be used as reference when Nitrogen Studios created Mr. Bubbles in CGI. To think that this random clown figure would go on to be a semi-recurring character in the CGI series. Thomas and the Stinky Cheese. The same shot is used twice here in the same sequence. When Thomas makes his way to the docks, this shot is shown.
Must get to the docks, must get to the docks, he chuffed.
Then he passes James, and...
even though his friends could smell the stinky cheese,
it's used again, and so soon after. They must have not shot enough footage of a cheese-covered Thomas with the flatbed. and got a little desperate in the editing room. Season 12. Thomas and the Billboard. This was the first episode produced in a model CGI hybrid style. All the episodes are still filmed on model sets, and CGI was brought in later to animate the characters' faces and all the people. The photographer is an all CGI character introduced in this episode. However, he does represented by a physical gauge 1 scale figure in this shot. Steady Eddie. Edward is referred to by the nickname Eddie for the first time in this episode. And interestingly, it's a nickname that sticks for a while moving forward. In Season 14, Charlie calls Edward Eddie.
I'm ready, Eddie!
And continues to do so in following appearances. Rosie's Fun Fair Special. Children's television writer Andrew Viner wrote this episode. He stated once in a letter in 2008 that he was a fan of the Railway Series books as a child, and that Stepney the Bluebell engine was his favorite. While purely speculative, it's possible that's why Stepney makes a totally random, out-of-the-blue appearance here, as he was Viner's favorite. Mountain Marvel. Proteus is relevant in this episode, who previously appeared via a story back in Season 9's The Magic Lamp. A statue of him is discovered here by Peter Sam. The big myth surrounding Proteus is regarding his magic lamp and its ability to grant wishes. And hilariously, his statue here inexplicably omits it. Henry gets it wrong. Brandon Docks' manager is represented here by Mr. Percival, who purposely is faced away from the camera. And they thought we wouldn't notice. Heave Ho Thomas. Hank is introduced in this episode.
Howdy, Thomas. Now you look like one of the finest little engines I've ever seen.
He is based on a Pennsylvania Railroad K4 class locomotive. Early concept sketches by senior modeler Philip Reeves revealed that he originally was going to be an articulated Challenger class. This was likely too large an engine for the prop crew, and he was changed soon after. Model designer John Lee also revealed in an interview with SIF that Hank was originally going to have a much older looking face with a handlebar mustache, and was changed later to have a younger, jollier face at Hit's request. Funnily enough, an articulated engine does appear later in the series in the form of Sam, as does an engine with an old face and a handlebar mustache in the form of Bo.
Breakdown crane! Breakdown crane!
They really were ahead of their time with Hank, weren't they? Toby's Special Surprise. I believe this episode features the only appearance of the close-up props of Toby's cab interior, specifically his back head. The full boiler was built prior to Season 8, and the prop builders really did their research with it. It resembles the boiler of a real J70 tram locomotive. I guess you could say, props to them! Boo. Okay, that was bad.
You suck.
Excellent Emily. Bulgy makes a quick cameo in this episode, in his red bus form. In Season 7's Bulgy Rides Again, he was converted into a mobile vegetable stand, and was painted dark green. And he made a cameo or two in this form after that. Him being red again here would appear to be a continuity mistake, but apparently not. As revealed in Season 21, he actually did return to his red bus form at some point off-screen.
Then I was a mobile vegetable stand, and now I'm back in service.
If we want to get really technical and count his cameo here as canon, he would have returned into his red bus form sometime between the 10th and 12th seasons. The Party Surprise. Michael Brandon changes his voice for Freddy mid-scene. For most of the episode, he gives Freddy a deep kind of dumb guy voice.
It was a surprise for Colin, sir. Colin has never been to a party.
And then mid-scene, it changes to...
Oh, yes, sir. If I work quickly, I can still put everything right.
Not sure what happened here. Saved You. Harvey appears in this episode, though he is never depicted with a CGI face. One was made for him though, as evident in some promotional photos for this episode. The face would not be used on screen until Harvey made his full CGI debut in Season 17's Thomas's Shortcut. Duncan and the Hot Air Balloon. Mr. Percival's twins play a role in this episode. The twins' names are never stated here, but they do have names as revealed in their concept art. Patrick and Pansy Percival. James works it out. Harold is depicted in full CGI in this episode. A frame of him from this episode, specifically this one, was used on the official poster for Misty Island Rescue. I'll be covering this atrocity soon. Don't you worry. Tram trouble. One of the buildings in Great Waterton seen on the right here is a pub called the Asquith Arms. Its sign features a photo of series director Steve Asquith wearing a jester hat, hence the pub's name, the Asquith Arms. Don't go back. From this episode onwards, Farquhar Quarry for some reason is retconned into the Sodor Slate Quarry, complete with a sign hung on the shed over the quarry's entrance. This retcon is kept throughout the nitrogen seasons, until the season 16 episode, Whiff's Wish, where it was retconned back into the Farquhar Quarry.
Toby and Mavis work at Farquhar Quarry.
And it has remained as this since. I don't think a soul out there liked it being called the Sodor Slate Quarry to begin with. Gordon takes a shortcut. This season was originally meant to be narrated by Pierce Brosnan, who had narrated the special The Great Discovery right before this season. He ultimately left the show, but he did narrate all of season 12 before he left, and all of the characters' mouth movements were animated to his voice. Following his departure, Michael Angelis and Michael Brandon were brought back to re-narrate the season for the UK and US respectively, syncing their narration to the pre-existing animation. Pierce's dub is currently lost media and has never been made publicly available, but a clip of his narration from this episode was posted onto Dino at Tennesseu's website.
Oh, I'm sorry I'm late. I took a shortcut, but I got lost. Huh, I never get lost. I know the railway better than any other engine.
The Man in the Hills. The Man in the Hills is based on a real-life location in the UK, the Long Man of Wilmington, which depicts the outline of a man holding two sticks cut into Windover Hill near East Sussex. Its origin is unclear, though the first known recordings of it date back to the early 18th century. Thomas puts the brakes on. This opening shot of Thomas passing the camera light engine is actually a shot that was previously used in Thomas and the Billboard. However, Thomas's face is animated differently in each. It's kinda neat seeing the same exact shot with different animation on it. Percy and the Bandstand. As revealed in storyboards by Dino at Tennessee, the original title for this episode was Percy and the Bandstand Surprise. Push Me, Pull You. Animating the engine's faces this season was accomplished by filming the props with face targets, in place of where their faces were. These allowed the animators to properly motion track the CGI faces onto the props in post-production. Every now and then, the face targets are visible in the final footage. In this shot of Skarloey leaving Duncan, you can just make out Duncan's exposed white face target through the gaps in Skarloey's cargo. Best Friends. Some weird mumbling was left in after Michael Brandon says this line.
And don't forget to have a wash down, thank you.
For comparison, the UK dub sounds like this.
And don't forget to have a wash down.
And don't forget to have a wash down, thank you. To have a wash down, thank you.
You really shouldn't mumble, because I can't understand a word you're saying.
And don't forget to have a wash down, thank you.
Seriously, what on earth did he say? Thank you?
And don't forget to have a wash down, thank you. To have a wash down, thank you. To have a wash down, thank you.
Mumbler!
Today, I will be going through every single episode of the first 7 seasons of Thomas and Friends, and share one fun fact about each of them. I know way too much about this show, probably too much for my own good, and so much of that information I would love to talk about in videos. But sometimes I don't get the opportunity to, depending on a video's topic. So I thought today, this would be a fun way to let it all spill out. This video will be covering the classic era of the series. And hey, if it does well, maybe we'll cover more seasons in future. Now I'm going to try and stray from obvious stuff and highlight information that may be a little less commonly known. And I know that some of you diehards may already know some of the stuff talked about here. But regardless, my hope is for you to walk away from this video having learned something new about the classic era of Thomas that you didn't know or notice before. Try to keep count of how many things were totally new to you, and post that number below in the comments once you reach the end. Here is one fact about each of the first 182 episodes of Thomas. Christmas is around the corner, so to add a little Christmas cheer to your day, I'm recommending Sooty Will again with his music video, The Little Engine Who Believed. This is a recreation of a song from the CGI series that had an, admittedly, pretty awfully edited music video. But Sooty here has gone and redone it completely with his own models and sets to create a more cohesive narrative visually. It's a very fun watch, and perfect for the season. Check it out! Alright, so an update on the current projects. I know that this isn't the Season 13 retrospective that you all were probably expecting from me. At the end of the last big video, I asked you all what you wanted to see me end 2024 with. A new retrospective, a Sodor's Finest, or something else. I was really leaning towards the retrospective, but many of you in the comments and over on Patreon made some pretty good arguments for Sodor's Finest instead, and you were pretty convincing. So, I am happy to announce that the next Sodor's Finest is being worked on, and oh boy, it's a real doozy. However, the story segment is a little bit lengthier than the previous, and I don't want to rush it or rush the people working on it with me, especially during this busy holiday season. I really want the end result to be great. You know what they say, you can't rush art. It was pretty clear that I wouldn't be able to get it out before Christmas, so Sodor's Finest will be the first video of 2025 to kick off the new year in style. And so I made this one fact for every episode video in the meantime to give the voice actors and everyone time to do their work, and to ensure that I got something out in December for you all. The Season 13 retrospective will follow it. 2025 will be the year of CGI Thomas, it seems. Hey, with any luck, maybe we'll actually reach the Brenner era by the end of the year. Lots of fun stuff in the works right now. If you want to stay up to date on the progress made on the new Sodor's Finest, consider joining my Patreon. I post clips, edits, voice samples, all sorts of stuff there from these projects as I work on them. And it also just really helps me out a lot. A massive thank you to all the patrons already there supporting me. You all are so great, and I appreciate all of you. I wish all of you and your loved ones a very Merry Christmas. Go enjoy your holiday. And I will see you all in 2025, folks. See you then. This video is a continuation of the previous, where I covered one fact for every episode of Thomas in its first 7 seasons, aka the Classic Series. I'll be covering the model seasons produced under Hit Entertainment today, all of seasons 8 through 12. As I did not cover the Pack spin-off series in the previous one, I'll cover that here too. Once again, my goal here is to highlight information that may be a little less commonly known. Now, you diehards watching may already know most of the stuff talked about here. So, like before, try to keep count of how many things were totally new to you, and share that number below in the comments. The official episode orders for the Hit era seasons are a little unclear, so for the sake of this video, I'll be going through everything in production order, aka the order of which they appear on the UK Complete Series DVDs. Also stick around to the end of the video, where I'll provide a big update on what's coming next month. Let's begin. This pick of the week has nothing really to do with the Hit era, but it's a good video that I think deserves more attention. It's Why Sodor Feels So Real by the Thomas Cynic. This is an excellent video essay, putting into words why the world of the Railway series feels so real. Stories within the stories told by characters make the characters feel human, while simultaneously adding history and folklore into this fictional world. He puts it into much better words than I could have, so go check the video out. It's definitely worth a watch, with the Railway series 80th anniversary coming up. And I'll use that as a segue into what I'd like to talk about next. We are less than a month away from the big 80th anniversary on May 12th. I haven't been posting here as regularly, and that is because I am working hard on a big video that will be posted on that day. Many of you can probably guess what it is, and if you're on my Patreon, you know what it is, but I won't spoil the surprise regardless. And maybe you shouldn't either in the comments. If you'd like to know what it is and get consistent updates and progress, consider joining my Patreon. It's gonna be big. May is going to be a crazy month, because I also have another video planned that'll hopefully be out towards the end of May. And it is the Misty Island Torture Fest. I mean the Season 14 retrospective. Yep, it's finally happening. I've rewatched Misty Island more times than I'd like to admit, and working my way through the season. I have my notes, and once the 80th video is done, I'll jump into that video. The channel is going to pop off next month. I hope you all are ready for it. And that's all from me, folks. Lots of fun stuff to come. Big thanks once again to all my patrons for the continued support. And I will see you all on May 12th. Bye-bye.